The closer they came to the border fort, the narrower the valley became. The steep, almost sheer walls towered high above them, blotting out the sun, although it was only a few hours before noon. The floor of the valley was in shadow, the sun only reaching it for a couple of hours each day, which probably accounted for the snow that still lay thick and deep on the ground, even though spring was only a few weeks away. In spite of the snow, the small party was making better time, now that they had reached the top of the steep climb that led to the pass, and they were moving on level ground again. There were 2 carts, each with a single pair of wheels and pulled by a small, sturdy horse. They were stacked neatly with sawn lumber, and as they were past the steep uphill climb, most of the Heron Brotherband rode on them, finding space among the stacks of planks and beams that filled the cart trays. Hal and Stig rode 2 saddle horses, leading the way for the carts. It was a newly acquired skill for the 2 Heron leaders. Stig had decided that they should learn to ride. After all, he'd told his girl, we always find ourselves in places where they expect us to ride. We might as well know how to do it. It'll save us a lot of walking. Hal had agreed, and Stig had searched around and procured 2 horses, rescuing them from a life where they would be destined to pull carts, and instead turning them into saddle mounts. They were stolid little creatures, quiet and unimaginative, nothing like a fierce, thundering battle horse, or a speedy, slender-limbed Aridon from the deserts to the south. But they carried the 2 riders uncomplainingly. Even Barney, the one tasked with bearing Stig's large frame. If need arose, both horses could be coaxed into a slow canter, or in extreme situations, a clumsy gallop. Once Stig had found them, Hal hired one of the Araluin archers, who was familiar with horses, to teach them the rudimentary points of riding. After suffering the inevitable tumbles, bruises, and minor injuries, both of them emerged as reasonably capable riders. They were, after all, fit and agile young men, with a good sense of balance, and the rhythm necessary to match their movements to the horse's gait. With one exception. I don't like trotting, Hal stated. I always seem to be going down when the horse is coming up. It's an unnatural way to travel, and it's painful. His Araluin teacher, who could sit to a trot instinctively, and so had no idea how to teach someone else to do so, took the easy way out. Why bother? He had told the young skirl. If you're in a hurry, canter or gallop. If you're not, just walk. That seemed reasonable to Hal, so he simply ignored the concept of trotting from then on. Occasionally, when he saw Stig managing to sit smoothly as Barney trotted beneath him, he felt a pang of jealousy. He was tempted to ask Stig how he managed it, but refused to admit his own deficiency. I choose not to trot, he would say, his jaw set stubbornly whenever the subject came up. Thorn, on the other hand, chose not to ride at all, even though Stig had offered to find a horse for him. I don't trust horses, Thorn said, glaring suspiciously at the 2 stocky little mounts his friends rode. Even the small ones outweigh me by several 100 kilos. They have big teeth and hooves as hard as clubs, and they're shifty. Shifty? Said Hal, stroking Jake's silky soft nose affectionately. They're perfectly trustworthy. Maybe to you, Thorn replied darkly, but not to me. Those big teeth could take off a few fingers, and I've only got one hand. And in fact, Barney and Jake seemed to sense his unease around them, and his antipathy toward them, and they reacted in kind. If Thorn walked too close behind Barney, the horse would often lash out, trying to kick him, and, several times, Jake had whipped his head around and given Thorn a painful nip on the shoulder. But with the cunning of their kind, the horses didn't do so every time he came within range, allowing him to be lulled into a false sense of security, whereupon they would kick or bite once more, without warning.